Thank you to everybody for being here. I am so honored and grateful to be here. And my hope is to give you some clarity on this topic. I'm not going to talk a lot about personalization. You guys have heard about that already. I'm going to focus on the struggle part. And usually that doesn't make me very popular, but let's see what you guys think. So these are the hashtags I use to describe myself. We can see at the end of the session if you guys agree. I work at Possible, we're a digital agency. And my role is technical strategy, focusing on MarTech and data for our clients. And my goal today is to help us all sort of understand what MarTech and data can do for us. And how can we unlock more value from what we already have, right? So let's get started. I am aware that I'm the only thing between you guys and the break, so I'm going to keep that in mind as I talk. Normally, there is so much noise coming at us about personalization, right? No matter where you look, if you're in this space, there's just constant information coming at us. And it's getting a lot, right? Would you say it's confusing, overwhelming, maybe daunting? Would you say it feels something like this? Jon Snow thinking, I have to fight these guys no matter what, right? If we agree that this is how it feels and we still want to do it, what does that mean? Like, why is that we feel we got to put up with this level of angst and this level of struggle? So let's look at some truths about the industry, about the space that make us all want to deal with this level of stress, right? First one, our customer expectations have never been higher. Now this statement is probably going to be true for all time now. Whenever you say it, their expectations are going to be higher than they were before. And that's because our customers have figured out that their experience is completely tied to technology. So as technology gets better, their experiences get better. And then obviously their expectations get better. And it's not just that their expectations are getting higher, they're voting with their money and with their data for these experiences. So when their expectations are higher and they're willing to do stuff for that, then we chase them, right? So the second truth is all of us brands, we all have a personalization ambition now. Pretty much all our clients right now are either in the middle of a personalization deployment, or they are planning a pilot this year, or they're planning the budget and infrastructure for a pilot next year. Everybody's being told by their bosses and their bosses that you better have something going. And it's because everybody's seeing enough results from personalization. We're seeing a lot of results from personalization. And we just saw that our customers want it. So then we want to do it, obviously, right? But it's still really hard. And it's still not just showing value. You have to do a lot of work to get there. And a lot of that has to do with the third truth, which is most of us are not getting enough from our tech and data investments. And this really is the reason that we picked personalization as the topic for today. So yes, personalization is a topic by itself, but what I want you guys to think of it today is use it as a lens to understand your stack. It's one of the few initiatives that we do that's a true full stack initiative. If you were to do A/B testing or DCO, which is dynamic creative optimization, or even multi-channel attribution, you could hand that assignment to somebody in your team in analytics, in media, in technology, and they could actually execute it. And then you suddenly have a report on your desk or in your inbox, and you have that initiative going. But that's not how personalization works. Personalization forces you to take a step back and understand what tools you have. How are they integrated? How do they work together? Where is your data? Where is it available to you? So that's the part of personalization that I'm really excited about. And that's the part that I want to talk to you guys about today. Because the struggle that we're all having with personalization is because it's forcing us to look at things we don't normally look at in our daily lives, right? We are not used to understanding our whole stack. How many people in this room can say they know their full stack, their marketing organization right now? That's not a common piece of content that we usually look for. Personalization forces you to go there. That's why it becomes so hard. So my goal today is to help reframe this for you guys. I want to give you guys some tools, some insights, maybe some opportunities that make this easier. Maybe reduce the struggle, maybe help you understand this problem differently. So let's start with the first one. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This is from Aristotle. We've pretty much all heard this in our lives. We've probably all said it at some point. It's true for LeBron James and Miami Heat. It's true for Kevin Durant and the Warriors. But never more true for your first-party data. Think about this for a second. Your first-party customer data. Is that a plural or a singular? Think about that for 1 second, right? We don't treat our data like it's one entity. And that's what leads to the silos that we end up with. So let me just talk about that for a second. These are some of our channels, probably not all. And then, by the way, we all grew up in channels, right? We're all channel experts at some point in our career, and that's a good thing. It helps us learn how different technologies work, how they work together. We become experts in channels, so that's a good thing. And then we start connecting our data. Oh, they forgot about this. The databases that are all in these channels, they house some of these data that we have in these channels. Then you start connecting them, and use like, my website needs to be connected to some channels. CRM needs to be connected to some channels. Some connections are one way, some connections are batch, some connections are one time. You connect all your media channels, and then this is what all your connections look like. Now, I am very aware that this is like an infomercial sort of exaggerated feel, kind of like this maybe, right? Watch the feet. Like, I'm super excited about how much she committed to that fall. I love it. Oh, wow. But I understand that this feels exaggerated, but I promise you it's not. I have multiple clients right now that don't even have this level of integration. But this is not the silos by itself, right? This is okay, because your data is still connected. The reason this becomes silos, and the reason this becomes a channel-based data organization, is because all the stuff we do on the data lives within the silos. So what I mean by that is anything you're doing, like data enrichment, segmentation, modeling, predictive analytics, you're doing those things. Brands are doing those things, they're great, but we're doing them within our channels. And what makes that hard is then you can't share that with other channels in any useful way, definitely not in real time. So suddenly, you have amazing models that you're running on your CRM data, but that's only living in your CRM channel. You have fantastic segmentation that you're doing in media, but that's only in your media. How do you start getting this across all the channels? That's the evolution that we want to figure out. That's when you go from a channel-based data organization to something else. So what does that look like? So you take your channels, and let's say you put a data platform in the middle. Now you have your integrations that we just showed already. They already exist. You don't have to take those out. But you start integrating some channels to this data platform. Start with web and email, then do media, then do all the other channels. And now all of a sudden, all your channels are looking at the same data set. So when we were doing this slide, the comment I got was, I've seen this slide 100 times. Show me something new. Agreed? But how many people have this? And the reason people don't do this is because usually our budgets come from channels. And suddenly this is a cross-channel initiative. Nobody knows who pays for it. And you don't understand how to green light it. But imagine if you took all those data activities that we just showed, enrichment, segmentation, modeling, predictive analytics, and if instead of doing that multiple times in different channels, if you suddenly did it in one data set in the middle, and then made all the learnings available to all the channels, what does that do to all your channels? Have you guys thought about that, right? If you didn't change anything else in your channels, but you moved all your data activities to this one central platform, all your segments suddenly are the same segments. You can activate in all your channels. You're working from the same data set across all your channels. So even though you're not a cross-channel organization, you've immediately aligned all your channels at the data level, which is really the main part of the analysis. And if you keep pursuing that, that can lead you to understanding more about your customer, and that's what we all want. This is not about a 360 customer view. That's always evolving and changing, but it's a single customer view. It helps you have a full picture of all the data that you have available, and it helps all your channels work from the same data set. And this takes you to an audience-based data organization, right? So that's the evolution that we all keep trying to make. Let me show you an example of somebody who did this well. Marvel. I already told you guys I was a nerd, so just saying. These are all the content items that came out from Marvel in the last 10 years. TV shows, movies, comic books. Think of them all as campaigns. Now, from everything we've known from Hollywood this whole time, what are the odds that something of this magnitude for this long makes sense after 10 years? Normally, you would end up with a fragmented situation like this. Imagine that Nick Fury is your CRM, and Tony Stark is your web, and Captain America is your email, Thor is your media, right? We would end up fragmented after that many campaigns running for that long. But that's not what happened here. And you know why? They had this vision for 10 years. These lines map to characters, locations, villains, story arcs. They all coalesced over the last 10 years into Avengers Infinity War that happened this year. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is not because Marvel does personalization. They don't. They don't need to do personalization. That's not who they are. But because they created a shared universe across all their campaigns and all their properties, and that led to something like this. So think about how many different directors they worked with, writers, producers, actors, studios. And in spite of all that, this year they were able to take on Thanos. Now Thanos, just so you guys know, is the most badass villain in all comic book universes. And they took him on this year with all their characters because they planned it for 10 years. They had a shared vision that everybody became part of, and that's what led to that. To set this in context, this movie, Avengers Infinity War, came out after the last Digital Velocity in April. And it has already made $2 billion. Already the highest grossing movie of all time in 6 months. And that's not because of how good the movie is, that's because of the vision. And they made people invest in this over the last 10 years, right? So that's my first recommendation to you. Unify your data and it'll unlock value in all your channels. Think about creating a shared data vision for your organization and then push that forward, and that'll automatically upgrade all your work. And think about it that way. Don't think about it at the channel level. Second opportunity. The difference between ordinary and extraordinary is practice. Now, I want you guys to think about this word practice for a second. What does practice imply? It implies learning, it implies repetition, it implies experience, it implies constant evolution. Those are all the thoughts I want you to keep in mind as you listen to the next slides, right? So normally, this is our view of personalization. It's a progressive, step-by-step experience where we have to go from left to right. So we're doing some sort of segmentation and one-to-some, but we're saying, oh, we're going to do one-to-one. That's our goal. We're going to do personalization. This is what we do, right? I don't have time today to explain all these aspects. You can come talk to me if you guys want. I want to talk about what we are learning about this context. So normally, as you go left to right, things get more complicated. They get more expensive. You need more data. And we assume that because of that, as you move to the right, the ROI is higher. And that's usually been the chase that we have when it comes to personalization. That's one of the things that's contributing to the struggle, is we are associating ROI with complexity in this model. So we wanted to test that. So this is one of our clients. This is a premium athletic brand, global. We sent 1.5 billion emails for them this year. And these are all our campaigns. And we plotted them with personal relevance against performance. And as you would think, as the campaigns got more relevant, we had higher performance. This was expected, intuitive. So that made sense. But we tried this with another client. This is an electronics brand. And we didn't get the same result. In fact, we found that our highest performing campaigns were not our most personalized campaigns. And that made us think, is this model correct? And it made us realize it's not a program, it's a practice. What I mean by that is you have to figure out what works for your business in this whole model. There's not a standard template that you can just apply. So instead of something like this, where ROI is just attached to progress on the right, you think of it more like this. It's a set of tools and a set of strategies or tactics, and you play with them like levers to find where the best ROI is for your business, your customers, your business model. So let me give you examples. If you take a CPG brand, it looks something like this. CPG brands today are trying to have direct relationships with their customers. Dollar Shave Club definitely created that environment. But for the most, CPG brands are still selling directly through distributors and retail, and they don't have relationships with their customers yet. And so they would naturally spend more time in mass marketing. Makes sense, might not need any of the other stuff. But if you look at a company like Amazon, they're probably playing in all of these. On the right is all their apps and notifications that you get from them. On the left is their marketing for Alexa, for AWS, which is brand level marketing. They're having to do both, right? And they're probably playing in all these things, but they're super sophisticated marketers. They created so many of the tools that we use today from a concept point of view, and they go after their data more aggressively than most companies. And then you switch to B2B, and it looks something like this. On the left is airport and events. For some reason, airport is all B2B companies' favorite marketing ground. But you look at airports on the left, and then Marketo on the right. And that's usually what B2B companies live with their marketing strategies, right? So it's important that you start thinking about this as a practice. You start thinking about this as a set of tactics that you need to adjust to find the ROI that you're looking for. Because the right mix and the right strategy absolutely depends on your business model. And there is no one-size-fits-all. That's what leads to the struggle. We are trying to apply what somebody else did to our business. It doesn't work that way. You have to figure it out for yourself. So we talked about data, we talked about the strategy, now I'm going to talk about the organization. So the third opportunity is tech and data is not a silver bullet. Now normally, all these initiatives, they start with a budget. Oh, we can do it this year, we got the money. We can do it next year, it's in CapEx. Budget has been approved, everything starts with the budget, right? It's all about an investment that the brand is making. And investment is obviously necessary and required, and we're probably making more investments in technology and data now than we've ever made before. This is a stack from Cisco. This won the Stackies. I told you I was a nerd. 2 years in a row, this has won the Stackies, but what's amazing about this is there's the customers in the middle, and I don't know if you can read all the journey, but it says, I'm aware, I shop, I buy, I install, I use, I renew. Those are journey stages for the customer's life cycle, and they've mapped their tools to those journey stages. And at the bottom, they've shown you layers that they need for run their business, decision automation, intelligent content, customer data foundation. They're showing you their vision through their tools setup. But the point of this is more and more and more companies are embracing the value of the tech and data stack, and they're investing in it. And that's amazing. We need that. Tech and data are absolute critical enablers. Without them, we cannot do most of the things we're trying to do right now. But we just saw earlier that most of the companies are still not getting value from their tech and data. And why do we think that is? So let me give you an analogy. When I was growing up, there were two types of posters on my wall. Heavy metal bands and supercars, and that was it. Nobody else made the cut. And of course, I had to figure out what it would take to own a supercar. But I started to learn that there are huge hassles in just washing the car, in parking it, in changing the tires, oil changes, maintaining the car. It was huge headaches. That's a big reason why I didn't buy the car, of course. But what we found is one of the biggest issues is that these cars crash the most. Those percentages is how much more likely these cars are to crash than our regular cars. Think about that for 1 second. These cars cost $200,000, and they crash more. Why is that? It's because we as humans, we generally overestimate our abilities and underestimate technology capabilities. That is universally true for most of us. Now, we think the more expensive a piece of technology, the easier it should be to use. The more expensive a piece of technology, the faster it'll solve my problems. Not the case. The expense is tied to the sophistication of the technology. The expense is tied to the complexity of the technology, which means you have to work harder to learn how to use it. And in spite of that, what we are finding out is companies are saying people and process is the single biggest issue preventing them from realizing value from their technologies. And it's because we think once you invest in the technology, once you invest in the data, your campaigns will magically just work. And unfortunately, that's not the case. The problem exists between keyboard and chair, right? So how do we think about this people and process now? We are investing in technology and data. We have our strategy. So what do we do with our organization? So let's talk about that. Typically, everybody's expected that people, process, technology, data, those were like the components of all these things that you have to mobilize to get success out of these things. But what we are finding is there's actually 4 areas. And technology and data, and to a large extent, content, get a lot of attention. But what about the other 2? What we found is that these 4 areas are all equally critical to get your success from these initiatives. They are codependent and intertwined, but they're not in sync. And what I mean by that is when one progresses, it doesn't mean the others progress. But we expect them all to progress together. And that's what leads to so much frustration. So at Possible, we're developing a framework. We use this framework with our clients. We want to figure out where are they struggling? Where should they focus next? What gaps can we bridge for them? What gaps can tools bridge for them? But we make an evolution roadmap to figure out where we are going to progress on each of these tracks. These tracks don't progress on their own. You need owners for them. You need focus. You need commitment. You need budgets. You got to make them all important. So let me just spend a few minutes on this and talk about some categories. These are oversimplified, of course, for this room, but please come challenge me or talk to me about this if you want. So on people and process, I want to start with that because typically the biggest issue we have on the left in crawl, channel-based. This is how we all grew up, right? And I don't mean channel campaigns. You might be doing cross-channel campaigns, but still be organized by channel. And what I mean by channel-based is your KPIs, your budgets, your presentations, your strategies, your deliverables are all based on channel. That's what I mean by channel. So when you go cross-channel, I mean your organization is set up as a cross-channel organization. And when you finally in the run stage and journey, you're probably at the audience level. You're organized at the audience level so you can understand journeys for your different audience segments. You're not organized by channel at that point anymore because we as customers and consumers, we don't think by channel. For my digital velocity schedule, I've used the web and mobile interchangeably throughout since I registered. There's no difference between those channels for me, but there's a huge difference in those channels for brands. They think that because they're organized by channels and because KPIs and metrics are by channels, all the strategy can be by channel. But the customer doesn't care about the channel at all. They mean nothing to the customer. On the content side, we live in the message world, right? What are we going to say on the homepage? What are we going to say on the banner? What are we going to say in email? We're very much thinking touch point and message. And then when you move on to the cross-channel world in Walk, then you're thinking linear. I'm going to send this email, it's going to come to this landing page, then I'm going to follow up with this ad, then I'm going to follow up with this page and this search ad. It's very much a handoff and a sequence. But we expect the customer to follow that prescribed sequence, which never happens, right? We have to accept that it's much, much more organic than we think it is. It's much more fluid than we think it is, which is why these channel structures don't scale. That's the big issue. There's no problem with them. They just don't map to the new behaviors that we are seeing from our customers. So when you go in the run, now you're thinking conversation. Now you're thinking, what is my conversation with this customer over the length of the relationship? And at any point, where are we in that conversation? That will dictate what information they are looking for, and then you know what information you're giving them. So now you're thinking content and information, you're not thinking formats and touch points. And this framework is not a 6-month or 1-year framework. This is a 4 or 5-year framework, and you might never end up in the run stage for your business, and that's okay. You might end up in Walk, and that's where you might find the best ROI. That's okay. But because we keep trying to go to the right, just because that's what we think maturity is, that's what leads to so much struggle. On the insights, we start with product targets. Product groups give us the targets, and then we use those targets to go find insights, and we'll buy those audiences. But again, that has nothing to do, usually, with what people are telling us with the behavior on our own channels. When does that come into play? So in the Walk stage, we're able to mine those data a little bit more. Maybe we put together some channels. We're looking at motivational insights. That leads us to audience insights. We're buying slightly better audiences maybe in that world. But when you get all the way to run, you're looking at your entire journey behavior and motivation, and that's leading to moments. So I don't have too much time to talk about moments, but think about it this way. I'm going to use my example. In the morning, I'm a father. I got to feed my daughter and get her to school. I go to work. I'm a technical strategist all day. I come home. I'm a husband. And after my wife goes to bed, I'm the nerd, right? And the marketing that I get through the day, if it understood that about me, it would be way more relevant because there's no point giving me B2B messages at nighttime when I'm trying to enrich my own knowledge. There's no point giving me messages in the morning when I'm too busy with my daughter. So moments is technologies that are figuring out what we are doing in the moment and then changing the content accordingly. That stuff already exists. The accelerometer and gyroscope in our phone, that makes that data available through the ad SDKs. So there are ad platforms now that can change content on your screen depending on whether you're lying down or standing in line or sitting or you just finished a workout. They can figure all that out in real time and act on it. That's where the sophistication is gone. And we assume just because that's available that our customers want it. Not at all the case. Depends on your product, your business, your relationship. And on the data side, I'm not going to talk about tools, but we talked about data. The use case driven is the integrations we saw earlier. Behavior is when we're trying to put some channels together, and then identity is when you actually get all data from all your channels working together in concert, and then you can actually figure out what this one person is doing through your entire ecosystem, right? So just an example of how we've used this for a customer. We got a data platform, and that jumped us all the way from crawl to run on the technology and data line. And then that actually did give us much better insights on the behavioral and motivational. But we were still in channel and crawl for people and process and content. So in that world, we just got better insights and executed our channel campaigns better. And we picked pilots for cross-channel, and we created audience pods on the agency side to bridge the gap and prove ROI. And once there was ROI, then we brought the client along. So your final state might be that you're in crawl in a couple of these and walk in one and run in one. That's totally fine. The point is to figure out what works for you. The point is to experiment with this in a way that you are constantly learning so you can constantly improve your process. And let me give you an example of how this evolution sort of pays off. So Domino's, I'm guessing everybody knows Domino's. 10 years ago, they were saying that customers were telling them that their pizzas taste like cardboard. People were actually rating their pizzas lower when they heard it was Domino's pizza than in a blind test. That's how bad the situation was. And today, they can take orders in all these channels from us right now. They have an app called Zero Click that you open the app, you don't even press a button, it orders the pizza for you. You can tweet an emoji at them and it'll order the pizza for you, right? They are delivering to beaches, they're delivering to parks. They're delivering pizza in pairs because they figured out that most people order 2 pizzas at a time. They have put all their data together, they have created a technology-first organization, and they have managed to create this. This is their stock price over the last 10 years. 7,000%. Was anybody expecting to see that? It's higher than Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple. Last 10 years. Think about that for a second. This is a fast food pizza delivery company, right? In this world, when we're obsessed with health food. This is how these guys are doing. It's because they fully embraced what their new evolution looks like. They became a technology-first service provider. And they embraced all the insights they get from their data, and they use them, and they act on them. And if it doesn't work, they fix it right away, and they move on. That's what value is sitting in your stack. That's the value that's sitting in your technology and your data. It's hard to unlock because it requires change. It's hard to unlock because it requires evolution. And evolution is what you need to truly accelerate the growth that you've given yourself with the technology and data investments you've made. Technology and data are your enablers. They are absolutely critical. Without them, you cannot do it. But they will not get you all the way. They will only give you the platform. You got to change on top of that platform to actually go all the way. So, in closing, we know personalization is hard. That was the title of my presentation, so obviously not a spoiler there. It feels like this, right? Don't you think that Jon Snow here was thinking, no, I haven't ridden the dragon yet. This is too early. I can't die right now. But it's because we feel trapped because there is no shortcut. It absolutely takes time. I am super unpopular when I say this, but this is the reality we are facing. And if you ignore this reality, you will struggle and struggle and struggle. That is where you move on, is you accept that it's hard, you accept that you have to evolve. If you do those things, the struggle will definitely reduce. So, in closing, 3 advice pieces that I have for you in case you're working on these initiatives. First one, be honest about your situation and realistic about your expectations. This is very important. If you give your agencies an assignment to launch personalization by December and no extra budget, you'll get a pilot and then you'll get nothing else. Just because when you put aggressive schedules on your teams and you're not realistic about what you have and what you need, you might get a pilot or 2, but then you can never actually make it an operational thing because you didn't figure out what your gaps were. You didn't figure out what you needed to do to change to actually unlock that value. We get so excited about these pilots, we forget about our operation. We have to think about our operation in parallel with the pilot and make sure you're working on both things. And please be honest and realistic about what you're expecting and for how much and in how much time. Those are critical factors that affect the success, the long-term success of these initiatives for you. Second one, like I said, create your evolution roadmap. This is very important. The skills that got you where you are today in your team are not the skills that are going to make you successful in the future. Our marketing world has completely changed. There is no marketing program today, not a single one, that is not completely dependent on the technology and data that's behind it. So think about, if you didn't have to learn those things earlier, how can you suddenly use them now? Just because 5 people came to the Telium conference and got certified doesn't mean the rest of your team will magically know how to use these things. You've got to think about your whole team and your whole organization. Some skills you might have to get new, and some skills you might have to augment, and everybody needs coaching through this. So make that plan. Understand where you are today, where you want to be in the future, and create that roadmap for yourselves. And the last and the most important thing, if you take one thing from this presentation, please let it be this. You absolutely need a reason to go after these programs, these initiatives. If you don't have a reason, they will always get shortchanged. If the only reason you're doing an initiative like this is because it's in your agenda from your boss, or because your bonus is tied to it, you might get it off the ground, but every time there's a fire with a weekly target or a monthly target or a quarterly target, they're going to take your resources right away and put them on that project. Because without a foundational reason, these programs don't feel important. They feel expensive and they feel complicated. But when you have a reason, then people are willing to invest in it. And by reason, I mean something like we're launching in a new market for an audience that doesn't know who we are. So we've got to do both brand and conversion messaging. We're launching multiple brands together, and we want to do cross-sell and upsell. We need to understand what's going to work for our audiences so we can promote the right products to them. We have to, if audience groups, you have diverse audience groups in your businesses, and if you have to sell different services to these businesses, then these programs become very important to you. So think about the real reasons why you want to do these programs, and then they will really help you coalesce. They will help you evolve. And if you have a shared data universe to go with it, then you can have your Thanos moment. Thank you.